This is For the Rest of Us with Ken and Megan Castellan, a podcast about theology, faith, the Bible, and life. You know, for the rest of us. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to For the Rest of Us with the Reverend Canon Megan Castellan. Guys, you figured it out by now. I am not the Reverend Canon Megan Castellan. I'm just Adam Eichelberger. I work with Megan at the Episcopal Diocese of Central New York. I'm a lifelong Catholic. I was reminded that I am now a toddler Episcopalian. Guys, I'm going to be honest. You're getting basically a potted plant out of me this episode because for the first time in the history of For the Rest of Us, we have special guests joining us. Megan, would you please introduce our guests and what you guys are going to be talking about this episode for the rest of us?
I would be happy to. We, as a podcast, are all grown up and doing a crossover episode. It's so exciting. We're like a real podcast now. Next stop, Joe Rogan territory. So I am thrilled and honored today to be joined by the podcast hosts of The Accessible Altar, the Reverend Robyn King and the Reverend Stephanie Shockley, who are two of my most dear and excellent friends. Robyn and Stephanie, I am so glad that you could be with us here today. So welcome to our humble podcast.
Thank you. We are super excited to be here.
Yeah. Yay. And full disclosure, we do know each other because we went to seminary together in the general seminary era of 2008, 2009. And we have been friends ever since. We all have, the earned wisdom and trauma reactions of that time period in New York City. We hide from the sound of jackhammers and drilling, and we have very strong and clear opinions about the selling of air rights in Lower Manhattan. And so I, just want to disclose that up top because we are a transparent and honest podcast.
You will have to cut this out, but I had to explain to someone the other day, Trinity Wall Street arresting bishops.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I forgot I moved to Canada and you guys don't understand.
Oh, you don't want to get me started on that. You're going to have to cut that part out. Anyway.
Yeah. The bishop brought up in staff meeting that she was mad at the Bishop of New York because of asking Trinity to pay more. And I was like, oh, no, Trinity should absolutely pay more.
Oh,
Trinity should pay so much more, though.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, okay. We're not going to talk about that.
Also,
so, yeah, Adam, all this is going to need to be cut out.
Yeah. And also, Adam, there are so many stories. But the first time I ever met Megan, I just have to tell you this story just because. Literally the first time I met Megan, she said to me, "Hi, I'm Megan Castellan. Do you know about the plight of the Palestinian people?" Like literally like that. And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Well, it turned out I didn't know as much as I thought I did. And she invited me to breakfast so she could tell me more about the plight of the Palestinian people.
That's extremely on brand.
Spoiler alert.
We are who we have always been.
I was going to say, I have never had any chill, not one day in my life.
Nope, not at all. Yeah, so I just want to make sure that you know that Megan is who she has always been, who she is, and we love her. And spoiler alert, we have both, Robyn and I have both been to the Holy Land. I with Megan and one other time, and Robyn separately as an individually, probably because Megan convinced us to go there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yep.
So
anyway, you got to cut all that out. But
we've known each other. The moral of this is we've known each other for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But y'all, why don't you start off with telling us a little bit about your podcast and how you got the idea for it?
We're both looking at each other, hoping the other one will start.
Yes.
So I'm Robyn King. I was ordained in the Episcopal Church and moved to the Anglican Church of Canada 13 years ago. Yeah, I think 13 years ago now. Wow. But 2020-ish, 2020, 2021, I messaged Stephanie. I was like, hey, can I call you? I have this idea. I want to do something around faith and disability. I think you would be a good partner. Are you up for that? And many, many conversations later, we started The Accessible Altar, a podcast of conversations at the intersection of faith and disability, which, I don't know, I think is going to be one of my favorite things I've done.
Yeah, it was in the middle of a really rough time for, well, the world, right? That Robyn got in touch with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the middle of the early COVID pandemic. And
Mhm.
we really did talk about it for hours. And I spent a while discerning kind of on my own, because having these conversations out in a public way was, I guess, a leap of faith, I guess. But Robyn and I worked together for a long time with, open Zoom channels and things like that to figure out how we could put together a podcast that would be authentic to our experiences within the church, and would invite other people to share their authentic experiences within the church, and do a little education, a little invitation to conversation, and just do what we could with what we knew to have conversations about faith, disability, religion, illness, where all that comes together in a way that maybe wasn't being done at that point in time, or at least not that we knew of.
Yeah. I mean, and all of that really came into broad awareness during the COVID pandemic, which was so much a time when we were talking out loud about health and illness and how to keep one another safe and what that looked like. But I know, because I know you, that for each of you, as for myself, this has been a long running theme.
Yeah.
In all of our lives. So do you want to talk a little bit about why you particularly felt drawn to this subject, and kind of how you went about thinking about how to have this conversation in public?
And I think that depth is it's definitely part of why I called Stephanie. And it's part of why I think it sort of came to fruition in the pandemic. Is I was starting to watch people who I don't usually see talk about bodies and sickness and weakness try and have those conversations. And I'm like, oh, we're missing a pool of wisdom that I know is out there, but is not accessible to a lot of people. I know that it exists now and but it tends to happen sort of within communities of disabled people or within specialized academic niches. And we need to get a lot better at this a lot faster.
Yeah, people were saying things, both good and bad, during the COVID pandemic that I had never heard people talk about before. And it was kind of Robyn's argument was, it's time to break the isolation of being disabled or chronically ill in the church and have conversations about it, because these conversations are happening whether or not we get involved in them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we need to get involved. It's time. It's time to break the isolation and add to the conversation in a positive way.
Which is not an answer to the question you asked.
No, maybe not.
But it was a good answer, just
so it was
to a different question.
Piece of information. The more direct answer to your question of like, why does this matter to me, is I'm chronically ill, neurodiverse, and disabled. When we started that, I did not know all of these things, but I had 3 brain surgeries between university and seminary. Pro tip, do not recommend neurosurgery for your spring break of your last semester of seminary, unless you have to, which is what happened. So sort of alongside being in the ordination process and theological education had been this really fast immersion into specialists and terms that not every medical practitioner I meet with knows what they mean.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to figure out how to put that all together and hold that together, and realizing that we're not good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Robyn and I have been talking about disability and illness since, from the time that we knew each other in seminary. I have low vision. I have a lifelong visual impairment. I have a form of albinism, which is a genetically based visual impairment. And it is incredibly uncommon for somebody with a lifelong disability to make it through the ordination process. It was a difficult and very isolating time. But there were people along the way who made it a little bit easier, and Robyn was one of them. And because we could have conversations about the obstacles kind of in the way and the struggle of it, even though we have very different experiences, that kind of made this a natural partnership for a podcast.
Yeah. And we have talked before, because my experience was different. I have chronic migraine, which became really intractable when I was in seminary and through the ordination process. But I was told not to disclose that through the ordination process, because I was told, priests don't have multi-year migraines. So there's you have no room to maneuver. But, we've talked, the 3 of us, about how the church has no institutional language for inclusion. It doesn't have a lot of structures for accommodating disability. Even as the wider world continues to really struggle with this, the church, even as it thinks itself as so progressive, is way behind in ways that we often don't recognize.
Right. It's almost as if the church just decided that we're all really nice people who try to help people. So therefore we just checked out of the conversation about the struggle and the justice issues around this particular topic. And that's not to say in all corners, that's not to say there aren't people doing the work, but there aren't very many compared to the percentage of people in North America that are estimated to be disabled, which is something like 25 to 28%. Of the population has some kind of disability.
That number shoots up to nearly half if you look at the over 65 population.
Right. And so we're not having those conversations, and it's not seen as a justice issue alongside other justice issues in most corners of the church. I want to say the reason we named the podcast The Accessible Altar, and we thought long and hard about the podcast name.
The name took the longest.
That name, right. We sat there with Bibles open and books of common prayer open and dictionaries open and just like stared at things on an open Zoom channel between the United States and Canada for hours and hours. The reason we came up with the accessible altar is because of our theory of disability in the church, which is the church is not truly accessible until all parts of the church are accessible, meaning not just the building, but until leadership is accessible, till the priesthood is accessible, till the episcopate is truly accessible. So it means everything from can people get into the building to can they lead? Can they be the presiding bishop? Until that is possible, and not just occasionally with like one random person who somehow made it through all this stuff, but until that's possible on a regular basis, the church is not accessible.
Yeah, which is a huge and wonderful goal. And we are very far from that at the present time.
Yep.
We were talking about how we started to assume we were the nice people who did good things for others, and we opted out of this. And Nancy Easland, who wrote one of the foundational texts of disability theology, named that as one of the 3 cardinal sins of the church in this area, that we operate out of charity. We are the people who go do nice things to those poor people over there. And we forget that we are those people. And I talk about it sometimes as we commit charity instead of practicing solidarity.
And a lot of times I see it a lot. A church will know what to do with that guy. You know, they'll know what to do about Bob.
Yep.
They'll know what to do about somebody's kid who's grown up in the church, who's always been there. They'll have structures in place to sort of accommodate that one person. But when you ask them to kind of expand that structure for other people, for a group of people who may not have entered the doors yet, that gets a lot harder, because what they can think about and see is, you know, that one guy, that one woman, that one kid, and asking the church, asking congregations to kind of think in the abstract rather than, you know, the neighbor's kid or you know, this one person that they know, is a lot harder. Asking them to bring empathetic imagination into the idea of accessibility rather than what does this one person need now to read the bulletin.
And to the slight credit of the people who are doing that, part of the reason they're creating accessibility for that person is they have a relationship with them. It's not someone who's coming in to make a demand. It's someone they love and know, and whose family and friends and they love and know, and they want that to work. But our ability to extend that to people who are already in existing deep relationships is just harder.
Right. And part of that does come from having opted out of the secular struggle for disability justice and disability rights. Having opted out of the ADA in the United States, for example, means that, you know, it's just kind of, we hope people will be nice kind of stuff. I mean, I went so far as to go onto the website for the Board of Examining Chaplains, which these are the people that administer the general ordination exams for priests in the Episcopal Church, to see if they've updated, since I took GOEs, to see if they've updated their accommodations for disabilities. And it's the same statement that it's been for decades, which is basically this will be handled on an individual case-by-case basis. That to me means you have no expertise and no policies, and that you have not looked at the best practices in the universities, graduate programs, et cetera, in the United States that are doing this work. You don't know what they do on the GRE. You don't know what they do for the LSAT. You don't know what they do for bar exams, whatever. You haven't looked at what anybody else is doing. you're just like, oh, we'll figure it out when Bob shows up to be ordained, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then it filters down from there into parishes, into dioceses, into, youth group or vestry or whatever.
Yeah. And what that often means in practice, because we just went through this with a seminarian who doesn't speak English fluently, we had to reinvent everything.
Yep.
And there was no assistance. And at every step, not only were we getting questioned by pretty much everybody in the church, well, why are you doing it like that? Oh, that doesn't seem right. Are you sure you're supposed to do it like that? That doesn't seem right. But there was also the sense that probably the next person coming after us was going to have to reinvent it too, because there's no category for it. There is no capacity for translation for the GOEs. There's no capacity for translation of seminary at all. And you would think in the year of our Lord 2025, somebody would have figured out how to offer like Spanish language education for clergy, but no. And not to mention, because I have 2 kids going through this, the IEP process for higher language is nowhere to be found. So it means in practice, unless you have nerdy diocesan staff who are willing to go down a rabbit hole with you and reinvent the process every time for every person, what's most likely to happen is you're going to have somebody at the bishop's office go, well, there's no structure for it, so we can't do it. So these are all the sort of practical aspects of inclusion. But I know that one of the things that we've talked about also is sort of the theological aspects of inclusion. The way we talk about disability, the way we preach about it, the way we talk about healing and health and wholeness. So can you talk a little bit about what that side of things has been like?
I'm going to need a more specific question.
So, okay, we need to fix how we talk about the healing stories.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay.
So I think some of this goes back to that like charity model, is because we understand ourselves to be the good people who do the nice things for those poor people over there. We read a lot of what Jesus does in the Gospels the same way. Jesus is the nice person, the Son of God, who comes down and does nice things for the poor, sick, disabled people and fixes them and makes them better, which is not necessarily wrong, but it is also giving too little credit to both the people who are in these stories and Jesus as God showing up to be with us in these stories. And that's really hard to unpack, because there is a level of a lot of us that would like to fix the problem. And part of the trick there is I'm not a problem, I'm a person. And the world is much happier to treat me as a problem a lot of the time.
Right. While we're talking about models or frameworks, and Robyn has mentioned the charity model, we, and by we, I mean the larger world, the culture which the church is a part of, we are also kind of captive to what I would call the medical model, which is you have a thing that makes your body not like other bodies. We must fix you. If we don't fix you, then we just kind of throw up our hands and just feel sorry for you and don't do anything else. That's too bad. It's a shame. It's a pity, etc. It's really damaging when you're preaching out of a charity model or a medical model, and you're talking to people whose situation isn't going to be resolved in the way that others might hope, or it can be really uncomfortable. I remember as a kid listening to sermons about, for example, blindness, based on some of the gospels that deal with people that come to Jesus who have some kind of blindness or vision loss or whatever, and just feeling like the person preaching obviously has no idea of what this experience is like, right? Because what healing would you propose? Would you like to re-scramble my DNA? Because that's the only way to fix this, right? So rather than that, let's talk about a world in which things make sense for more people, that's more accessible to more people, in which people are seen as people and not as problems, right? People get to be, and we stop acting like it's a taboo subject. Like, oh, that's, disability. It's really scary. It's really awful, etc. I don't know. I don't like kind of being told that I'm a problem. Most people don't. And people are allowed to, the autonomy thing is so important, and people need to be allowed to make their own meaning out of their situation. There are some people that really want people to pray for them to be healed. And guess what? That is okay. They are allowed to want that. But you don't get to assume what people want as we all have to ask people what they want because everybody wants something different. I just want
Mhm.
people to stop giving me trouble.
Which is
Like,
Yeah.
You don't need to pray for anything related to my vision. Just stop giving me trouble. Just stop getting in the way.
That's right. You live in New Jersey. You want no more trouble.
Yes.
and that is something we see Jesus doing in scripture, where he will ask the person, what do you want?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we often preach on the fact the person got healed more than that moment where we really see Jesus acknowledging there's a person in front of him who has a full life.
And I often say, like, with some of those folks, I mean, yes, maybe they wanted their vision loss to be restored because not having vision in any era is a pretty challenging experience, particularly in the ancient world. But you know what? People can be very, very selfless. Maybe they have a child or a cousin or a niece who's very sick. And what that person actually wanted from Jesus was the healing for that child or some kind of other intervention for somebody else or something else that was important to them. I don't know. Jesus asked. And I love that. It's a great model.
Yeah, because we do see other healing stories where the person comes to Jesus and intercedes on behalf of somebody else. It's not them and what they need.
Another thing we talk about is the resurrection. We talk about the wounded Christ. And I went through my entire life, decades and decades, without really noticing that the fact that Jesus remains wounded is really important because he's the risen Son of God. He could do anything he wanted, right? So if he wanted to be all shiny and new and not have any wounds and not have this like weird gaping hole in his side that I'm sure is probably awkward and uncomfortable or whatever, he could have done that theoretically, I would think, right? But Jesus shows up with all of his wounds, with his physical trauma, which is, I'm sure, was representative of other trauma, right? The human Jesus still has all the things that happened to him. And you know what? He's still the resurrected Son of God. He doesn't have to be fixed in order to be who he is. He is a whole person, human and divine, in those post-resurrection appearances. Really important from a disability theology point of view.
We talked about that on the podcast when we talked about the resurrection.
Nice.
And I talked about how that idea that Christ maintains his physical wounds was what brought me around on the bodily resurrection of Christ. That I had been kind of like, I don't know. But it was the idea that he mortally continued being broken and that physical manifestation of brokenness was redeemed and made new, but continued to bear the marks of trauma. I was like, okay, I can get on board with that. That seems awesome.
That's pretty, yeah. In one of our podcast episodes from the depths of the pandemic, I mean, some of our podcast episodes are very much from a particular moment in time, and you do need to hear them as that. But one of our classmates, Reverend Gabriel Lamazares, talks about pandemics, talks about HIV, AIDS, and talks about being a witness, a close-up witness to a whole lot of the struggle of the AIDS pandemic. And he talks about the wounded Christ being the reason he's willing to believe in like literally anything after all the trauma that he has seen and been through. It's really, really important theologically. And we don't talk about it enough within our congregations.
And it is this particular moment that promises something, I think, distinct. And it is also congruent with so much of the rest of what we see in the Bible, where we have the God who, continues to love and keep promises with Jacob after he is injured in the wrestling, where we have the God who calls Moses, who has, it seems like, quite likely some sort of speech impediment and is not a confident public speaker and is like, okay, take your brother. He will do the speaking. Like, the Bible has a lot of other things to say, but there is a consistency to God showing up with and choosing people whose bodies are not fitting a typical, whatever the typical standard would be seen as, that is important to hold together too.
What is the one most important thing you hope people take away from listening to your podcast?
Ooh,
I think for me, there's a richness to the conversation that is ongoing that we get to join in. I remember the years when I wasn't aware of any of that, and it felt even worse because it was like I was trying to figure this out on my own. Nobody has done this. Nobody is talking about this. And It turns out people have been talking about this for a long time. It is getting easier to find those people. The internet is a good thing. Publishing has changed a little bit. And hopefully we're one of the ways people can find some of that too.
I would say, so Robyn, speaking about isolation versus community and all that. So in addition to that piece, and I was like, can I have two? Oh, so she got the one. The other thing, the thing that I would say is for people, for all of us, whether you're disabled or not, because it's a very complicated topic, just to be aware that we don't know what we don't know. I encounter a lot of people, often, theoretically like able-bodied people, but not always. I encounter a lot of people that just think they know they learned something about disability and they're good to go, all set. And it's a constant learning process. And because every person's experience is different, every person's needs are different. And so we need to learn to have conversations with people and not just assume we know what they want or what they need or kind of how they feel. I think that's one of the most important things I would love for people to take away. And you can tell, like, when you listen to the various people we've interviewed, everybody has a different experience. Everybody has a different perspective, and people don't ask them or us very often for our perspective. They often assume things. I was just at a diocesan clergy gathering yesterday, so I'm a little salty today because I often find that things related to my disability happen at diocesan clergy gatherings that don't happen the rest of the time when I'm just in my parish. So, I don't drive, and I get a lot of weird comments from people, but usually from colleagues, not usually from parishioners, usually from colleagues about not driving. Rather than nobody's ever asked me about my experience. They just say random things at me. And I got through almost the entire day yesterday. And right before my Uber pulled up, somebody said something kind of off to me. And I was like, God, just have a conversation. Just have a conversation. Don't be weirdly rude and asking people you don't know to reveal personal medical information. I'm not talking about that. But when you have an ongoing relationship with somebody, maybe see what you can learn and don't assume you know one if you know one disabled person, you know one disabled person. You don't know all the disabled people. That was a really long answer. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm a little salty.
No, that was good.
Today.
And I'm recalling a conversation I had earlier this morning where I lamented to a colleague that life would be so much easier if we could rely on the common sense of clergy. And yet.
And yet.
This is the broken world in which we find ourselves, where we can't.
Which God loves, which is good, because some days it is hard.
Yeah. I'm glad God loves us.
Good thing.
Because, oh boy. Well, I am so grateful every day that you guys are having this conversation because it's one that the church so badly needs to catch up on. And I am grateful that you were here with us today and that you are as awesome as you are.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. I know we'll post the link for the Accessible Altar in the show notes. We have lots of resources for people. And we're also happy to talk to folks, to dioceses, etc. And just to be there, we don't know we don't know everything about all the things, but sometimes maybe we can point to a resource or be a little bit of a sounding board for people.
Yeah. Or just to come and start the conversation. You pointed me towards a wonderful local resource to start the conversation here with clergy and leadership in Central New York, which we're going to follow up on and do a second workshop. Just beginning to have that wider conversation with your leadership and your parish leaders, your diocesan leaders is so worth it. Because, you don't know what you don't know.
So if folks want to learn, I'm still here. So if folks want to learn more about the Accessible Altar, you can visit accessiblealtar.com. You can catch up on episodes, learn more.
And we should be most places you find podcasts.
There you go. If you visit accessiblealtar.com, you can find episodes, resources, ways to contact Robyn and Stephanie, links to all their socials. Now, as is a tradition here on the podcast, I have dubbed Megan the official rector of the For the Rest of Us community. I like to ask Megan like a this or that question every time, or like, what is her opinion on one thing? Now, here is what I want to know from you guys. If you could permanently get rid of one season during the year, and then all three of the other remaining ones would get longer, what would it be?
Well, I know what Robyn's going to say.
Oh, yeah?
I want to be very clear that I'm saying this on a day where it is negative 27 degrees Celsius outside. I would get rid of summer.
I'm sorry, this podcast doesn't recognize the metric system.
They said there'd be no math. There you go.
Yeah, I can't do those kinds of conversions.
So I thought that you meant liturgical season, so I was about to go into heresy. So thank you for making clear that we're not talking about liturgical seasons.
Oh, no. Those ones stay.
Yeah.
I am also getting rid of summer. Absolutely. Can't stand it.
Who hurt you?
I looked this up, and negative 27 degrees Celsius is negative 16.6 Fahrenheit. It is what we generally call too damn cold here.
Sounds lovely.
You know, minor.
That is the scientific definition of too damn cold.
Minor risks of frostbite, but I would get rid of summer in a heartbeat.
You'll be fine.
It might cost me my marriage, but I would do it.
It has been snowing every day for the past week.
Oh, it's snowing too here.
And we're also in like the time of year when the sun sets at 3:30 in the afternoon. And I want to die. Why is this? Like, where did the sun go? There's no sun. And Ithaca on the subreddit has started posting. Somebody will say, "There, I see the sun. Everyone go outside. Go outside. I see the sun."
Megan, I have good news for you. We live in a time period where light is historically cheaper than it has ever been in human history. And it is easier to be warm than it is to get cool.
It's fake light.
You can
fake.
buy the real light bulbs. Layers. You're a knitter. How do you not like winter?
I'm sorry. Winter is the best. And
Knitting is my coping mechanism.
I almost died in Jericho in May. I can't even talk about it being hot. I don't want to talk about it.
It gets very hot in Jericho.
Now I need to keep an eye on Reddit. Like, I just envision in my head, like, everybody like checking their devices and getting the notifications and then going outside and staring at the sky like an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah, it's like that Ray Bradbury short story, like where it keeps raining and then there's like that one day. Yeah, somebody posted today around 11, "Go outside, they see the sun." Everyone's running outside.
That's adorable.
But yeah, I can't deal with winter. And it will get better, like once the cloud cover breaks up, but no.
Well, as we always do here on For the Rest of Us, hey, do us a favor on your way out the door. Just throw like a high-flying crescent kick at the subscribe button and hit it. And do us a favor, leave the show a rating and a review because it gets in other people's ears. And also, listen to The Accessible Altar and give them a rating and a review and subscribe to their podcast. And we will talk to you all next time on For the Rest of Us. Thanks for stopping by and checking out For the Rest of Us with Ken and Megan. If you like the show, maybe subscribe, share it with a friend, leave us a review, and we hope to see you again next time. For the Rest of Us is a production of the Episcopal Diocese of Central New York.